Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Be Fearless. Today, we are very lucky. Today, we are blessed with our very special guest, who is, we are blessed with our very special guest. Apologies, I'm going to have to shut that down again. Don't know why that keeps coming up, but I'm going to try and apologies. I'm going to have to shut that down again. Get rid of that. Sorry about that. We're blessed with our very special guest. Dr. Jordan's with us today, and I'm so glad you could join us today. Thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm happy to be here.
And he's joining us all the way from the other side from where I am. I'm in the UK here, and I believe you're over in California. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I want to say good morning to all of our listeners, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, good night, if it's that time of the day. And thank you for joining us to learn some more about how we can be more fearless in our lives. I am your host for today's G.S.T podcast. I'm Lisa Marie, and I'm a primary school teacher. And now I help parents with their learning at home. And I also illustrate children's books. So without further ado, let's find out some more about our special guest, and I am going to share with you some things, and then I'm going to let him tell you about all the wonderful things that he does to help people. So first of all, we've got he is a certified voice artist and a trainer, and he's also a speaker and a writer, as well as a digital marketer, a live stream host, and a content creator, and many more things, which he'll be able to tell us all about. Over to you.
So I'm not a voiceover artist, but I have managed people before. I have a publicity firm called Schaul PR, and I also have Scapegoat Strength, which is a coaching and consulting entity which helps people who have dealt with toxic workplaces and toxic family systems. And I do have a background working with animals, but I'm not currently doing much of that right now.
Fabulous. Well, we're looking forward to finding out more about you during this short little episode today. And we are going to dive into the questions about how we can be more fearless. And I know that you're going to have some great stories and advice for us about being a little braver than we might have been to face things that we find give us the fear, because we all experience fear. So my first question for you today is, can you think of a time in your life or an episode, an experience where you allowed fear to prevent you from doing something you wanted to do or knew you should do, or perhaps you didn't allow the fear to stop you from doing it?
So, yes, I think that I grew up with a lot of fear of failure and even fear of success. And I would say that I let it get in my way when I thought that I needed to be perfect. And I was far from perfect, but I had this impression that I needed to be perfect. And that comes with kind of growing up in a family system where I think performance was important. How well I performed was important, or at least I perceive that to be the case. So I think that instills in someone as they get older a fear of sometimes even trying, because they don't want to let themselves down. They don't want to let other people down. And so there's been a zillion examples, but I certainly can relate to that.
For sure, yeah. So when you've had specific episodes where you've felt that fear that stopped you because you've been scared of fear of failing, or fear of being successful, for example, what have you done to try and prevent yourself from allowing that fear to stop you? What sort of strategy?
So I've spent a lot of time actually in therapy, to be honest, working on self-esteem and kind of reprogramming my mind, quite frankly, to look at the world through a different lens. And so, which is not uncommon for people who have traumatic backgrounds. And so I really needed outside intervention to kind of help me get to that place.
For sure. And I think that's it's good advice for people to be aware of themselves and know that when they do need to ask for help or intervention. And I think certainly if you come across fear stopping you from doing things, and there are things that you want to do, I would advise as well that people go and seek help, however that may come, whether it's from counseling or coaching, or even just reaching out to someone and talking about it. So would you say that you live more fearlessly now as a result of your counseling? And what would you say is the main strategy that you remember that helps you to push through all the time with things that give you fear?
Yeah, I think healing from unresolved trauma helps people with certainly anxiety, and which can even manifest in attention deficit disorder and all kinds of things. And so when I got to a place where I think that I addressed a lot of those issues, I was much more mindful and present, and I also don't have the same expectations or the same kind of drive that was kind of dangerous. So I'm much more tempered in my approach, and I can live in the moment, and I'm not as distracted and OCD, quite frankly. So yeah, I can't overemphasize the benefits of dealing with trauma. And it, you know, in my case, I was and I didn't know it at the time. I was born quite premature, and so I started off life with quite a bit of trauma. And I wouldn't have thought of being a preemie as being particularly problematic, because I didn't really understand what could influence, what could induce a traumatic experience. So early, adverse childhood experiences or things like that.
That's very interesting, because those the things that happen before the age of, say, 2 to 3, we have no memory of, do we? So I suppose we have to be taken back and think about those things and how they could have affected us inadvertently without us knowing. So it's good to get to the bottom of those things and find out, and then move forward with how you can find strategies to work through those things and to help you. So would you say that there's something that now at the moment that you're somewhat fearful of, or that you have been recently fearful of, and how are you dealing with that, or how have you dealt with that?
Yeah, I mean, my career has been kind of an interesting trajectory. A lot of up, a lot of down, and I think that when we compare ourselves to other people, I love the expression, it steals our joy, but also we're constantly vigilant, or constantly thinking about measuring up, and when you can kind of remove that lens, it frees you up, and it's very liberating, and it's calming, quite frankly.
That's really interesting. How would you describe, how do you think you got to that place? How do you think you got to the place where you found it was calming and liberating? What advice would
Again,
you
I
give
would
to-
say years and years of therapy.
Okay, so you
Not
think it's
everyone needs
cumulative.
that, but
Yeah.
for me, it was particularly helpful. And then also talking to other people who have similar experiences. I think it's been therapeutic, and also reading a lot about trauma-informed care and trauma conscious existence. I think that's been helpful.
Yeah, and that's really good advice. Thank you for sharing. So now that you have experienced sort of the breakthrough of being able to go through the counseling and come out, you know, with a different view and outlook on everything, what is that transformation been like in your life? How has it changed everything for you from the way things were?
Um, I'm certainly not so hard on myself. I'm able to be in the moment, which allows me to focus on what I'm doing. I have a different I'm not as judgmental of other people or myself. My interpersonal relationships have improved immensely. Um, and I guess I can enjoy the journey and not look at life as this destination, because when you're performance driven, or you use that metric, you're constantly looking for an end goal. And when you realize there's no real end goal, then you can kind of enjoy, you can be in the moment and um, find the things that really make people, I think, happy or content in life. So
I love that. I love what you just said. I think that's so important, you know, that we do live in the moment and find that joy and contentment. And I think what you said as well is really important when you're talking about how all the things that you can now do, the being kinder to yourself, being less judgmental. Sometimes we don't even, I think before people go into personal development or any kind of counseling or coaching, often they're not that aware even that these are difficulties that they have. And I love the way that we can be enlightened and we can find out how we can work through those things that we struggle with and come out at the end being more fearless effectively when we face challenges and things in our lives. So would you say that you could give some advice to people listening about becoming more fearless and not so and not saying, oh no, that's not for me, you know, and giving things a try and taking risks?
well, I think you have to experience, I think, moving away from a culture where everything is maybe transactional or conditional. And one way to do that is to just kind of naturally mingle with, kind of experience how other people see the world. And when people genuinely are interested in you because of you and not because of accomplishments or whatever, um, it's very liberating. And so you get more of that in your life. You kind of find your tribe, and it's part of a healing journey. So
That's a really significant thing to say, actually, because it's true. I think we all need to find our tribe, don't we, in life? And you're absolutely right. I think that I've always thought that the key to happiness is people. You know, it would be a very lonely world without the people around us. And when we found the right people, it can make such a big difference in our life. And I hear what you're saying about sometimes you feel that maybe people are only around you because of a certain status, and then you go through the ups and downs and those people don't stay with you, but your real tribe will be there through thick and thin. And I think it's people that lift us up as well and help us in effect to be more fearless and to live more fearlessly, because we're happier and more content and able to take those risks. So I think you made a really, really good point there about talking about people and your tribe. So thank you for that. If I said to you that I knew someone who was stopping themselves from doing something that they really, really wanted to do, and that they weren't going to push themselves forward for that interview and to try and get that job because they just didn't think that they were going to be the right fit, what would you say to that person if I brought them to you?
Well, I mean, first of all, I completely understand the anticipatory anxiety. I mean, I almost feel like I don't want to. That's a tough call because it's easy to say, oh, do this, do that. It can be paralyzing. So again, I think it takes a lot more work than just kind of some behavior modification. And although that can certainly serve people, I think really kind of diving pretty deep, which a lot of people never get the luxury to do with the help of, specialists. I think that, really kind of examining things. I mean, I never understood when they say do the work. I didn't really understand what that meant. I was opposed to it. And I thought it was a very abstract concept to me. And now I understand it's a lot of hard work to go back and deal with these unresolved trauma, and a lot of people have a lot of trauma. Some have more than others, but I can't endorse people going in and getting help with through therapy or some modality. It can't hurt, it can only help. So
Absolutely. So really, the key to what you're saying is to reach out and get the help that you need to work out how you can work through that problem and work through being able to do something that perhaps you should do. Because I'd hate to think of this friend not going forward just because they believed that they weren't good enough, whereas people around them could perhaps see the potential in themselves that they couldn't see. So, as a friend, I think you, like you say, your advice would be to reach out to someone for help so that they can help you to see that you can go for things if you want them, and it has to be your decision. I think that's a really good advice for our listeners. So thank you so much. Is there anything else that you'd love to share with them about how you have it helped to have this very successful career that you've had and been able to start living in this authentic way where you are aligned with the right people around you and the right that you see the world in such a different way now, such more objective way? Is there any more advice you could give to people, do you think, today?
well, I mean, first of all, thank you. I don't know that wouldn't say that I've had a very successful career. I've had an interesting career. I wouldn't call it so successful, but I would say that we're so ambitious as a culture, and I think we don't realize that we kind of we get lost in our own ambition and our attempt to keep up with the Joneses, as they say. And so in that regard, I would think that, look at some priorities and dive deep and kind of work on interpersonal relationships. I think that would be the most constructive advice I could offer.
That's very good. It's very important. And again, it comes right back to people, doesn't it? It seems to be a thread that runs through when I talk to everybody, really, that we just can't exist without those relationships and making those relationships work for us. And it helps us to be healthy, and it helps us to do things that perhaps we find challenging. So thank you so much for joining us this week. And I was so glad you could come because I didn't want to have to wake you in the middle of the night to interview you. So I'm really glad.
I'm grumpy, right? You learn that I'm grumpy at night.
We've got a lovely, reasonable hour to talk to you, and I love that.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad you could come and share all of this wonderful wisdom with us today. I really appreciate it. And I'd like people to know where they can get hold of you. How can they reach out to you?
Sure. So just my name is my eponymous website, or eponymously titled at jordanschaul.com. Or if in the case you need PR needs, schaulprgroup.com. So there's a couple other websites all on that main one, jordanschaul.com.
fabulous, and definitely worth taking a look. I've had a little look myself, and so if you're interested in contacting Jordan, then please do. We're going to pop your details in the chat so that people can get it direct from here. And if you're not watching us live and you're watching the replay, please put in #replay so we know you were here, and put #live if you are with us, because we also like to hear that you've come to see us today and share your views on our chat today about being fearless. So we'll be back again next week with another episode of Be Fearless. So all is left for me to say thanks again, Dr. Jordan, for being here. I'm so happy to have you. And we're going to say goodbye to everyone who's watching us. So until next week, we hope to see you again. Take care.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.